Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good? Good? Still used to writing in 2023? That kind of deal. So here we are, 2023. I know I've said it in previous shows, but January for me is one of those months where it's like, oh God, okay. So it's, you kind of do a review. I've noticed, everybody reviews 2022, what's expected for 2023. But let's look at it, at a personal level. And, everybody's got, plans hoping that everything's going to be better. And I have a feeling it's going to be better. Over here on the farm, all my chickens are doing well. Forward we go. And again, I want to remind you all to go ahead and sign up on my Substack newsletter. I'm still working on my next book, on the book number 3 in the Sybil Chronicles universe, and I am hoping to release it maybe in April or May. It's just that it's that saying about life gets in the way, something like that. So I'll keep you guys, but again, like I told you, every time I usually release a book, I do giveaways on Amazon, a Kindle version for like 4 or 5 days. That's what I did with the last book last year. So, and besides, you know, I send out the newsletter, and it's got interesting little podcasts, got some interesting articles there to go with it. But anyway, let's get on to the good part. And the good part is the guest that we have on tonight. And I'm very excited. This is the first time this gentleman has been on Stories of the Supernatural. His name is M.R. Gorga. He's a former copywriter and journalist with film and TV credentials. And he brings his talents to the paranormal horror genre. A child in the wake of the Amityville horror in the Summer of Sam, his talent for crafting hair-raising tales was first recognized in the 4th grade. When my teacher called my parents after first reading one of my stories, I thought I was in trouble, he fondly recalls. Instead, he announced, "Your son has a real talent for writing. Sign him up for the Young Authors Club immediately." His writing career now spans decades. His work has appeared in numerous magazines and Fox Family's channel, Real Scary Stories. Between writing, he plays a mean guitar and swills copious amounts of coffee without pets. And the reason why I laugh is because a lot of people, it's like then this, and my cat, my dog, my parrot, and I love it.
Yeah.
Help me welcome him. How are you doing, MR?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
As you can tell, because I talk about my dogs and my chickens and everybody, and stuff like that. But at the same time, I appreciate it
Yeah.
because,
Well, the preconceived
it's
notion
like,
is
hey,
that,
there's people out there that are perfectly happy without the pet, without the therapy dog. Obviously, you've been writing since you were very young.
yeah, very at a very young age. Yeah,
Okay.
I was writing since
And,
elementary school.
and like uh, that hard. There we go. Anyway, go ahead. Did you hear
I
my last
believe you.
question?
I did not. Can you repeat that, please?
Nah, don't worry about it. No, that you started writing as a kid. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm like one of those that, and you started writing like the horror genre and things like that, scary stories, and I know a lot of kids enjoy that. And is that what you that the genre that you always wrote in as you became an adult, or how did that happen?
Well, I started writing. I don't know why I started writing scary stories at such
Hmm.
an early age, and like I said, I think that at the time, it was Amityville Horror had just come out, and they actually
Yes,
filmed the movie about one town over from where I was living in New Jersey at the time.
really.
And at the same time, it was about the same time was Son of Sam was running around New York City with you know, shooting people. So it was like I remember just this wave of fear that
Right.
kind of like went over like the tri city, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut kind of area, and it was as a kid, it was just this wave of fear, and somehow I just think that kind of fed into me a little bit and made its way into my writings and my interests. So, but yeah, when I wrote the first stories, of something about some mummy on like a murdering spree, and it was really something a, a, a
Okay, did it
for.
cut out on you? Did you hear me? Guys, we're having a little bit of a problem, but don't worry. If anything, I'll edit the video. It's not a big deal with the audio. Um, the people like you were saying, you were living it, and people don't understand that if you lived in that area when the Son of Sam shootings were going on, this people were really wigged out with this. This was like
Oh, it was
uh
yeah.
scared,
It was complete sweeping terror everywhere. I mean, I was a little kid. I thought Son of Sam was going to come knocking on my door, but I lived in Jersey at the time, so but I was a
right?
kid. I didn't know, like, you know. But that was,
Right.
for that time, that was some big scary news.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I heard that people were like, it was like everybody's looking at, okay, this is the type of person has been shot, so don't look like that person that got shot. People were like
They,
really like
they started
didn't want to
dyeing
get.
their hair. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
heard about her
yeah.
wigs, and it was like, and
Well,
yeah, it's one of those things that when you're a kid, still, you see your parents or your adults around you wigging out, and you're like, okay. And
yeah.
of course, the Amityville Horror, God, that took off from there as far as so many versions of, before, the murders, that the failed murders, and then afterwards, the things
Yeah,
with the Amityville thing. So
yeah.
yeah,
I don't
that's
know
a
why
that,
my yeah, I'm not sure why my parents allowed me to see that movie at that age, but they did, and
you know what?
the Jody the pig demon has never left my psyche.
You know why? Because I tell everybody, you remember back in 70, well, no, you maybe remember a little bit. I think I'm going to date myself, but I don't care. Back in 73 when The Exorcist came out, first it was like Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, The Omen, and,
Yeah,
all these devil movies came out. But you remember
yeah,
when The Exorcist came out that everybody was running around, priests were getting, the churches were getting filled and people wanted to get, exorcised. I tell everybody, why was it so scary? It was a well-made movie, but I think that
it was a phenomenon, and
up
no one
to
had ever seen anything like
then
that
we
at
were
that time.
kind of innocent
Yeah, yeah,
when it comes to horror movies.
yeah. Well, it wasn't the genre that it is now, and no one had ever seen anything about a possession on film before. So it was like, they literally had people were fainting and throwing up and
No,
passing out in the theater. They had smelling salts on hand to bring people back to, and it was such a phenomenon that even the director William Friedkin couldn't
well,
believe it was happening.
the thing is that people realized, I don't know, because think about it. Okay, it was a kid and everything, and but yeah, I heard. I mean, I went to the movies unbeknownst behind my mother's back when I shouldn't have. I went with her younger brother, which was my uncle and his wife. And I lied because otherwise she wouldn't have let me go to see it because already by then, there was news stories.
Right.
But yeah, it was then after that, when they came out with The Omen and the Amityville Horror and
The
all those
Omen.
types of movies.
My mom let me watch The Omen too. Yes.
Yeah, and then the Omen, and that was another thing. The thing of using a little kid in the Omen, that was a first for like a scary satanic theme
Yeah.
kind of, to use a little kid, a very sweet looking little boy. That was, I want to say, that was like that creepy child thing, in the movies,
Yeah.
like um and yeah, that, but I think we were, as audiences, despite all but the worst we got before that was Hammer Films, The Blob, and stuff like
True.
that, and
It's true.
everybody. But yeah, it took off from there. And let me ask you, have you had your own weird or paranormal experience, or is it something you just write about?
Well, no, I mean, because the book is called "Demons Among Us: Shocking Real Life Stories from the Paranormal,"
Hmm.
and the reason why I
Right.
wrote it was because I write my personal accounts, as well
Hmm.
as a very little known, very scary historical account that took place in 1671, and and so the book is has my personal accounts, you know the
Okay.
the top personal accounts, like all the ones with the wow factor. But yeah,
Sure.
I have plenty paranormal. I like to call them like they're more demonic in nature than sort of you know ghostly or
Then the
hauntings,
ghostly,
which
did you have anything as a kid, or was it as an adult?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have so I have two firsts I like to talk about, and
Let's
what the
go.
first, yeah, the first one was as a kid, and this
Hmm.
was as we talked about, and growing up in New Jersey, and I was a little kid, and we lived in a two-story house, and on the second story was like the TV room, and there was a laundry room there,
All right.
and my sisters were playing outside the laundry room, and then all of a sudden, this white, large white ghostly hand comes out of the laundry room, and it reaches out to grab them. They freak out and they run up the stairs, and I'm sitting on the stairs, and so they run up the stairs and they're crying bloody murder. And my parents come down, and of course they come down and look, and there's nothing there.
Okay.
Well, it was, but it was scary enough to the point that we still talk about it whenever, like, we have Thanksgiving, or it's like, hey, remember the
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
the creepy white hand, so it was,
And
you
you
know
know what? Let me ask you, was this something that just happened all of a sudden after you guys were living there, or you had just moved in, or what?
well, I mean, it wasn't anything creepy about the
Did you
house. It was the
guys?
house that we built it. My father built the
Okay.
house with the family,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, and so it was our house from the ground up, and so it
Okay.
wasn't like
Okay.
there were any witches on the grounds or anything
Well,
like
you know
that.
what? You always hear sometimes people buy houses in their older houses, and then later on it's like, surprise. you,
Yeah,
you get an
exactly. Yeah, they
experience
didn't
like what you
research it enough.
described.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, but you know what?
But yeah,
Sometimes
and
also they say what happens on the land sometimes is you don't know what it is, even when you build a house.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but no, we were kids, and that was the first experience, and the one of my adult, the adult story is
Uh-huh.
much more sinister, much more, a lot scarier, and that was. I don't know if you know anything about my background, but I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. And when I
Okay.
first became a believer,
Mhm.
one of the first experiences I had, and I knew nothing about prayer. I knew nothing about praying. I knew nothing about nothing. So I'm
Okay.
fresh off the banana boat. And so I say, all right, let me give this praying thing a shot,
All
right?
right.
And I don't even know what it is. Talking to the air, I guess, right?
Hey, that's
And
for anybody looking at you. Yeah.
yeah, and and I'm like, I don't know. I get on my knees. I don't know. I guess okay. So
Mhm.
I do that, and I start to pray, and then all of a sudden I felt this presence enter the room,
Okay.
and it was a very, like, dark, dark presence that
Really?
entered the room, and I feel it come up right behind my right ear, and it stops right at my right ear. And I kind of scrunch my shoulder and kind of shirk
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was away
Okay.
because I wasn't looking back. I could feel the terror coming off of it,
Sure, sure. You're like, do I really want to look?
and I wasn't going to look back. And then all of a sudden, spoke right into my ear and said, "You might have gone to God, but you belong to me. I will never let you go.
Hi.
You're mine." And yeah, and so, but and it wasn't the voice of what you see in Hollywood, these hoarse, scary,
Uh-huh.
gravelly voices. This voice was actually very baritone,
Mm-hmm.
very actually regal, with
Okay.
authority, and very princely and silvery. And so, but beneath that tone, you could sense this cunning evil. So it was like
Okay.
this almost royal kind of voice with an underbelly or an undertone of cunning, manipulative
Okay.
evil. And that's my first adult experience.
And did you? I bet did you keep start praying hard or harder right then?
I think I got
What
up and I
happened?
said, "What the fuck was that?"
Oh my God, that's great! Oh my
So
God.
listen. So I don't know if it was the actual Satan, the devil, or if it was a minion. I don't know.
Right.
But I know
Okay.
that it was. I know that it was demonic, and I know it spoke directly into my ear, and I know it
So
was
let me
real.
ask you something. In this place that you were living, or what happened? This was the first time you'd ever had that or what?
Well, that was the first time I had that happen. Yeah, because you know, and the reason why something like that happens is because whenever you set yourself up to become a believer in
Sure.
God or accept Jesus Christ, you immediately have a target on your back because
Yes.
you changed camp from evil to good, whether you're in this
Right.
camp of evil or not, which I did not know
Right.
because I
Right.
just
Right.
live, because you're deceived and you just don't know. And so I changed camps, and and Satan, demonic forces come immediately to try to
Get you
detract
back
from that.
into the
Yeah.
get you back in line over there.
Yes.
And so did you have any more experiences where somebody was trying to nudge you off the straight and narrow with Jesus, or did they give up after that?
Oh no, they never give up, and that's why
I
like
know, but it's more like, that
well
kind of
I
whispering in the ear, I'd be like, yeah.
yeah, no, part of the reason why I wrote the book, actually, Demons Among Us. I don't know if
Mhm.
you see the
Yes, there it
cover, but
is.
yeah,
Okay.
Demons Among Us. Like, the book is actually an answer to a string of nighttime assaults that I was experiencing at the hand of these demonic entities,
Okay.
and it was my answer back because what I was experiencing was midnight strangulations, taking my breath away and strangling me with steel iron hands gripping around my throat, evil whisperings,
Okay.
biting scratchings, and the weight,
Yes.
the iron pressure on the chest, pressing you into the bed, and all these other kinds of similar experiences. And so Demons Among Us is actually my answer to that, because I said, okay, you're gonna attack me. I'm gonna attack back, and the
Okay.
last thing that these things want is to be exposed, to have the light shown on them. And
Mhm.
so, and this is why I wrote the book, was to kind of expose
Sure.
this type of evil, and to
Mhm.
alert to the fact of these principalities or powers or dark forces operating in the world around us that you may not be aware of, just like I was not aware of.
Let me ask you, do you know what was the point of origin of those attacks? Or did they just start happening?
Well, at the time, I was prayer leader in held a high function. It was like an intercessory prayer leader at the ministry of the
Okay.
church that I go to, And when you operate at that kind of a level,
Mm-hmm.
again, you get this target on your back because you're doing damage in to their realm or to their kingdom or to their government. And so and they can't have that. And so they attack me and other people like me who's set to task in that kind of level. I'm sorry, can you
There
say
were
that again?
others. There were others then in what that you were working with, that you were praying with, that you guys at some point compared notes and realized you were having similar experiences.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it wasn't at the time. It wasn't just me.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that night, we got together on Thursday nights. It was a Thursday night, and afterwards, I there's about 25, 30 people, and I said, how many are experiencing these types of these attacks at night? And then one by one, all these hands started to go up. It was like 13 in all. And so I got angry because it was like, nobody wanted to come forward and saying they were experiencing these attacks because they didn't think they didn't want anyone to think that they were crazy. And so that was, it was a mix between my experiences and knowing that all of these people were under attack. It, and that's the reason why I wrote the book, was to just kind of
So,
shed the light. If we're under attack, how many people other are out there that don't know that what they're experiencing is actually a spiritual or demonic thing set against their life, whether it be severe depression, anxiety, suicide, and or any of those things. These things are actually spiritual in
do
nature.
you? Let me ask you: was there anybody that got scared enough after the experiences that they stopped attending, or did everybody stick to it?
No, 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 no. That's the thing, is like, that's a, you kind of look at that as like it's a badge, basically, because what you're doing is you're doing something. You're causing damage. So they would not attack if you were not a threat. So they were actually more encouraged to actually, you know, press in more, pray harder, pray against more demonic activity. And so it emboldened them more to know that the reason why they were being attacked is because they are a threat.
But let me ask you: so everybody stuck to guns, and you all continued to meet. And how long did this take place then? How long were you guys
I did this for
being
years. I
getting
was
this
like
type of,
leader for
for
like
lack of a better word,
12,
harassment?
13 years. I functioned in that ministry, in that role, for like 13 years or so.
And was it only auditory, or did you ever see anything?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
There are times, a lot of the times they're invisible assaults, but there are times when things, they manifest in the physical, and you can see certain entities. And I talk about it in the book. Okay.
So, okay, so here you are. I asked you that you had never, besides obviously the auditory and the sensations, if you had seen anything. Did you ever actually see something, or was it just the presence?
Yes. There was one episode where, and I talk about this in the book.
Okay.
It's chapter 3, and it was one of the most
Mm-hmm.
harrowing experiences I've ever experienced at the time of the writing of this book. And
Okay.
and I had, at the time, I was working at a newspaper in the marketing department, and I was caught in a round of layoffs, and which meant I could no longer afford my apartment downtown, so I had to move out west. And so I moved out to a house that was belonged to a family member that they just kind of left the house, and
Mm-hmm.
it was sitting for like 6 months. And so when I showed up, it literally looked like It literally looked like the monsters of the Addams family were living there because when I
Okay.
showed up, yeah, when I showed up, like it was a townhouse, so all the grass was overgrown, and then there were drifts of sand drifting in the in the driveway, and the fence was dilapidated, unpainted and raw, and there was even the fence door was even like
It
creaking
was
in the breeze.
like,
It was like all the hallmarks of like a horror show. And to make things even creepier was, it was a townhouse, so it had these two bay windows, big
so
block
this was like
windows.
your typical haunted house.
Well, it was the haunted townhouse, but it was, so it had these
Okay.
windows, and they looked over the lot like these two vacant eyes, and it was very reminiscent to me of the Amityville Horror, um, you know. And so this was where I moved into, and so one night I was the master bedroom was on the second floor, and so one night I'm trying to sleep, and it's it's late, it's in the middle, it's the dead of night, and all of a sudden I start smelling this really foul odor,
Okay.
and it smells like garbage and gaseous with a gaseous chemical kind of note. And I'm like, I get up, something very rotten, and I get up and I'm like sniffing around, and then I go downstairs to flick the light on and check the garbage. There's nothing in the garbage. Check the garbage disposal. There's nothing there,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's not a dead animal because I smelled dead rat and dead animal before, and it
Right.
wasn't that. And then I look up at the air vent and I'm like, and so I get on a chair, I put my face to the air vent, and this rot is just breathing onto my face.
Okay.
And I'm like, So I climb down the chair and I cut the power to the utility box, get back up on
Okay.
the chair, and now it's blowing out without any power,
Oh,
and it's just blowing out on its own. And I'm like, and I know I'm in for something that night. so
okay. I was gonna say that must have been. And I'm gonna ask you, were you alone in the house?
I was alone in the house, yes.
Oh
And
my God.
so, yeah, so I go back upstairs, and I'm like, all right, whatever's gonna happen happens. So I
Right.
go back upstairs, and I go, I'm trying to go to sleep, and then it's about 3:33 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and I hear something call my name,
Oh,
and it says Michael. It's like really slow and creepy and serpentine, and I'm looking over to the left, and I don't want to look. I don't want to turn around. I don't want to roll over, and and it sounded very close, but yet very far, almost as if it was like spoken from like a cave.
okay.
And and so then I rolled over, and so I see something flash like under my eyelids, like a shift in the light. You could see underneath your
Mm-hmm.
eyelids. And that's when I rolled over and I looked up, and there's this figure looming over my bed, and it's tall, it's lanky, it's black cloaked and hooded, and its head is cocked, and I can see a semblance of the face in deep set in the cowl of its hood, and it's got this broad smile looking down at me with its head cocked, and I'm just frozen because I feel this waves of this waves and bands of like hatred, black hatred pouring off of this thing. I can feel it
Mm-hmm.
not only on my skin, but it's burning through my body like a boiling tar. And
Okay.
so this waves of hot hatred and fear or whatever, and it's looking at me, and then I look down, and its hands were like nails, and it was creeping slowly up my chest.
Oh my God.
And I've had a lot of experiences, but the reason why this was so scary was because this was the first time it's ever manifested itself in the physical, and I can feel it as real as any touch ever. Felt it, its hand moving up my chest, and and I'm looking, and I remember looking down, and I looked at its gown and its robe, and it was crazy because it was, as much as it was spiritual, it was physical, because it was 3D in every sense of the word, like you could
Okay.
see me. But as I looked at its robe, and the robe was pretty wild because it was bands of, it wasn't like tatters or anything like that, but it was like
Mm.
neat long rectangular bands like the Florida blinds, right?
Okay.
And and but they were in layers, and so the black, or it went from like dark gray to black. So the deeper the layer, the blacker it got. It was almost like looking into space, and it was moving with this watery motion, just flowing like it was like underwater, but you could see through parts of it, which was very strange. And I was like, I remember thinking in this terrifying moment, I'm like, well, that's got kind of beauty to its movement, you know?
Yeah, it's like, okay, let me
And
try to get something.
it's a weird thought to be going on in my brain at that time,
So
but
let me,
there was
were
like a
you
real
hoping that when
fluidity
you
to it.
moved, were you hoping that when you had made that move that maybe you were going to get not visited anymore? And that
No,
what
no,
what that proved that
no, no.
no.
You
Okay.
gotta expect this is the kind of the reality that I live, that this stuff is going to happen. So, but this is, this was the first time like it ever manifested
Okay.
itself, in that complete physical
Okay.
form. It was just lanky, crooked shoulders staring down at me, and its intent was obviously to, you know, to kill me, because its hand was like a weapon, and and um, and that was. And that was that experience. So, yes, they do manifest in the physical.
Okay, everybody, we're back. We're back because it seems, and my my guests have, I mean, my audience has heard before when I call paranormal sabotage, which is where all of a sudden your electronics, everything has been working great until you start talking about certain subjects with certain people, and then everything goes sideways. And MR was explaining to me that has happened more often than not in other interviews. So here we go. Let's go. This encounter that you had, that you were explaining that you had moved out there to this house, and this is, you're having, like, you're actually seeing something, which must have been terrifying, by the way. And you were
It
like,
was,
you're trying to, like,
yeah,
I see
and
beauty in this, but at the
crazy
same
because
time, how did you, what's the word I'm looking for? How did you handle that besides like running from the house, tearing your hair out? I don't know. I would have, I think.
Well, well, okay. So first of all, like you have to understand up to that point, I have lots and lots of experiences.
Okay.
So I know this is, even though this was the first time it had kind of manifested itself in such a physical presence,
Right.
it wasn't my first experience and it wasn't my first rodeo.
All right.
And so, I know off the bat that these things are demonic in nature. These are, these are demons in
Okay.
whatever form that they choose to take. And this is the form that it chose to take in this instance.
Okay.
And so, but what happens is at first it comes with like this paralyzing fear. And because it wakes you up or jolts you out of sleep. So there's that part of the fear, is that it just happens and you're completely, asleep and jolted awake into this into this crazy situation. So there's that fear. And then you kind of have, there's a paralyzing power that they have too. So they kind of like take your breath away. So you can't cry out. They kind of like almost have the ability to kind of like freeze you there momentarily.
Okay.
Right. If that makes any sense. Right. So you're kind of like frozen for a second. And then once you kind of get your bearings together and finally able to speak, now these things have no power for the believer, the follower of Jesus, because Jesus himself gives his believers power over these forces. And he says, I give you power to trample on snakes and scorpions over all the power of the enemy. So these are no match for the power that's been granted to us and people like me over these dark entities and demonic forces. So what happens is when you're finally able to speak, you call in the name of Jesus, and these things just evaporate like a mist. It kind of like evaporated like a mist folding into itself. And that was the end of that situation.
So they didn't give up on you that quickly, I take it then. Did the visits or the encounters lessen as time went by, or would it just go through like, peaks
No,
and valleys where they would?
no, there, no. Yeah, I mean, it's, as long as as long as I am a follower of Jesus, a believer in God, these things are going to happen from time to time. So it doesn't happen like every night.
Okay.
But you just go with the understanding that this is part of the walk. This is part of that faith walk. And just know that you have an entity or an enemy. You have demonic forces that are out, that are against you, and they want no good for your life. In fact, they come to steal, kill, and destroy, and that's their mission. But we have in Jesus, we have more power. We have power over them. It's an incredible thing that you think about.
Did you ever come to the point though that you were like, okay, because let me tell you something, that's got to be a horrifying experience. I mean, just one time, I can't imagine what it was like to not know when all of a sudden you're gonna have like that thing that you were saying, that all of a sudden you smell this bad odor coming out of your vent, and then
Yeah.
you disconnect the electricity and it's still blowing. It'd be
Yeah.
like, like that's that's a psychological effect. That's I gotta imagine that after a while it wears you down to some point, because it's almost like, is there going to come a point where they're going to say, forget it, he's never coming back, he's on that side? And
No, they don't stop. In fact, there's reports like that even like when you're at death, they come at you even at death. So as long as you're living for God, as long as you're walking in faith, this is what you can expect. But there's no, they don't have any power over you.
Did you ever feel that?
The reason why it is scary, because they show up in the dead of night,
Right?
to kind of like, to catch you off guard, because you're most vulnerable.
Did you ever have encounters outside of your home, like in the car or at work or any other place?
No, it's usually at night, and at this particular instance, it was 3:33.
Okay.
And they choose this 3:00 hour. I found out recently, and I was wondering, like, why is it always this 3:00 hour, 3:33? Well, that's I found out that high Satanists and witches, high witches. I'm not talking about like poser witches. I'm talking about real real witches,
Right.
and and that's their prayer time is 12, like at 12 to 3, and they send out these demonic beings. They send out, um, they send out these demonic prayers, and
Okay.
these demons go and they think they do their bidding, but they, you know, but that's the time. That's why they call it the witching hour, and
Okay.
that's why these things happen at that time, partly.
Let me ask you, did you, just out of curiosity, I know that you said you were, that because of your prayer group, but did you ever come in the crosshairs of some type of either witch or anybody that was into occult, beliefs, and they went after you personally, do you think? Or this was just strictly because of what you were doing with your prayer group?
Well, that's that spirit, that entity that showed up. That was a spirit of witchcraft.
Okay.
So whether somebody was sending it out, or so witches on assignment or
Okay.
whatever against me. But yeah, there's been it's, and this is all like in the spirit. This is all spiritual stuff. So it's
Right.
like, um, and so, but yeah, there's witches, and there's Satanists praying against people like me all the time. And so, but yeah, I never was like in Walmart and someone like freaked out on me. No, nothing like that. But
Yeah, oh my God. You
but
know,
I have come out of like church and found like chicken bones and people
really.
trying to, do some, voodoo or
Yes.
whatever, try,
Yeah.
things of that nature. So that stuff happens.
Yes.
But then, again, there's no power. They have no power, you
Right,
know.
right. And that's, yeah. And what was it? I can't remember. I was one time I saw one of these specials, and it was in some town, I want to say in the Midwest somewhere, Wisconsin, Iowa, something like that. And um, there was a people that lived on this land, this farmhouse kind of deal. And later on, they started having like a lot of paranormal phenomena happening in the house, a lot of it with a demonic slant, very sinister.
Yeah.
Later on, and they're trying to make head or tail, like, how did this happen? How did this come about? Why us? Why now? Later on, they find out that apparently one of the neighbors, because this is an area like your neighborhoods are, it's not like next to each other. Apparently,
Hmm.
was a witch, and she just took a disliking to the man of the house, the father,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
she had done some type of ritual against him. And it took forever for them to figure out, with the help of somebody else, what the origin of it was. But they
Mm.
had a lot of really bad and unusual things happening to them in the house.
Yeah.
And I think I want to say that at some point, I think they found, you know how these older houses, they're raised off the floor, they've got like a crawl space underneath.
Hmm.
Basically, where this person had gone there and had set some type of, I want to say object or something like with a curse, something along those lines,
Hmm.
against them.
Yeah.
And prior to that, they just couldn't understand what was happening and where was the origins of it. And that's why I asked
Yeah.
you,
Yeah. Like,
had you
what did I
made
do?
somebody mad at you, and they're like, okay, we're gonna we're gonna let you have it. Uh,
Well, I mean, it's not even a matter of making someone mad at you. This is what's called, it's spiritual warfare.
mm-hmm,
And so they know who the true believers are. They know who the true, who's truly a threat to their, to that realm, right?
right,
I'm not making myself out to be like some, kind of, superhero in I'm just saying,
right,
but they know, and this is a spiritual warfare, so they know, and so they get demonic knowledge, and then they can send it out against people, and they send out prayers over specific areas, over specific neighborhoods, over specific cities,
let me ask you, okay, now
and
that you
so.
said that, did you have any type of where you know how, like you said that they have occult activities,
Hmm.
Like when you mentioned that thing about the Son of Sam's, I don't know if you're familiar with that book, The
Yeah.
Ultimate Evil. I think
Mm.
it was Maury Terry or Terry Maury. I mix up his name. That he had basically the book that he wrote was based on the belief that those murders was just not Berkowitz, that it was a group of Satanists who had carried out this. In other words, that there was
Sure.
all this cult activity going on at that time in the area,
Sure.
unbeknownst to
Yeah.
everybody. Uh,
Sure. It's deeper than, yeah, it goes deeper than just Son of Sam. Yeah. Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
And that it was, after you looked at certain aspects, you realize that okay, this was not something that could be done by one person. It's a very interesting read on the book and the information he presents. Where you were living, do you think that there was any type of cult activity or anybody doing black magic? That why they would target you guys? Because that's pretty intense stuff that was being sent at you there.
Well, you're talking about two different places. You're talking Son of Sam and everything like that was
Well,
like
I
when I
know,
was
I know. What
7
I'm
years old.
saying is that
and
sometimes what was going on over there, nobody thought of that. Like you said, when the Son of Sam murders were going on, everybody really just thought it was one guy running around killing people.
hmm
You know,
hmm
and then of course when he
hmm
came out with that thing that the dog told him and the dog barked and all that, it was like, oh, of course.
Right.
But
Right.
nobody really ever thought it was something beyond that, a crazy guy, a murderer,
Right.
but a crazy
Right.
guy. And that's why I was
Right.
wondering where you were at originally when you started having these experiences. Did you? And I know sometimes, like you said, religious groups or gatherings or anybody they get targeted, but especially when there's a concentration of them, like they're like,
hmm
hey, we're gonna do
Yeah.
exactly what you described. We're gonna give them a lot of grief. Were you aware of anything going on where you were
hmm
living at that
hmm
time of any groups that?
No, no. I don't know of any specific groups, but I just know that these these groups that they, knowing what I know, I don't know
Okay,
where they're at, but I know that they're,
sure,
I
yeah,
know they're around,
yeah.
right? And this is they they gather and they send out curses over the land and over
Okay,
people, and so I know what they do. I don't know exactly where they are,
okay,
but this is what they do. And it's not just my neck of the woods. It's you know, it's they're and they're powerful. But they again, uh, Satan power is no match for God power.
sure, of course. But still, it's they try their best. I mean, let's face it.
They sure do.
Everybody needs to sleep. Like I'd be like,
Yeah,
"S-
yeah. But
what did?
real Satanists and real witches, you wouldn't know who they were.
No, I know
They
that. I know that. They
yeah,
blend in really well.
yeah.
They
Right,
know how to blend
right.
in well. How's that?
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. You would never know.
Yeah. Everybody thinks that they're running around with a black cape on, like eyes wide shut. And it's like I'm not saying that there's not
No,
ceremonies like that, but a lot of those psychopathic types, yeah, they look really normal. They practice at it a lot.
right. And the thing is like, yeah, because those are, there was a book out called, He Came to Set the Captives Free, written by Dr. Rebecca Brown, who was a high priestess as high as you can get,
Mm-hmm.
in Satanism, witchcraft at the time. And she was actually, um, to be the bride of Satan,
Huh.
right? Um, and so she gets saved. She gives her life to Jesus Christ. She understands. She the lights go on, like, oh my God, what am I
Right.
doing, right? and
Okay.
and so now she's a target. And but what she was talking about was, the people who walk around, you kind of, walk around and they look like they worship the devil, or they look like they're witches. Those are the posers,
Right. Yeah.
you know. The real ones are very underground, and you would never know it.
Right. Yeah.
And this is something she kind of talked about in detail in that book. It was quite an eye opener.
Right, because everybody thinks that the ones, the goth type, the ones that are wearing black and got the eyeliner on and stuff like
Right.
that. And
Right.
yeah, after a while, you realize that's not gonna do. You wanna blend. You wanna blend in.
Yeah, that's low level witchcraft.
Yeah, right, exactly. Let me ask you in that story that's very interesting about what was the catalyst? I mean, this lady sounds like she was in earlobe deep. What what happened
She
that?
was, yeah, she was. I think she was raised. I think her father was like a head
Oh,
warlock,
oh
and
boy.
so she was groomed as the bride of Satan,
Okay,
and Satan himself would appear to her, and so she had real powers. And she talks about um, witches' battles. This is in
okay.
California. She was talking about that there are witches' battles, and
Mm-hmm.
but basically like which witch has more power, and then
Okay,
they would like transform into animals, things of that nature, and then someone would shoot a gun and the bullet would stop, but these powers are not their own powers; these are demonic powers,
sure.
but that enable them to do these things. So it's not like who which witch or warlock is stronger. It's like who has a stronger demon,
Okay.
and that's how it works. So they think it's their. A lot of times their power is under the operation of Satan and demonic powers.
So, I have heard of that. That yeah, that some of the some groom their own children, which you stop and think about it. That's a horrible thing, though, to grow up like that under those circumstances.
Yeah, yeah,
That's got to be a horrible thing for a kid.
yeah,
Uh, and
yeah.
and
Well,
and let me tell you something. You're
the
right.
defeat
Talk
is
about
the
somebody
simple
getting
as that.
a bullseye on them. She probably had a big one, or still has one. I don't know where she's at, but yeah, that
Well,
lady.
it would.
She must have been. I wonder, did she ever describe in her book what happened to her afterwards once she pulled herself out of that? Whatever, it's like every time the conversation starts going in a direction, man, we were going along just fine. And then all of a sudden we started talking about this lady and how she was you know, groomed as a child,
Mm-hmm.
and the next thing you know is like you were not there, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, there we
Yeah.
go.
Stuff is.
Paranormal sabotage. Incredible to think.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. That the this is keeps dropping. And for anybody that's listening to this that thinks that when I say that I have not had a problem with my connections all day and just to make it interesting, I'm absolutely serious. It's just one of those days that I got up today and I've been working on material all day long using the internet. I had not
Yeah.
had not even a hiccup, a sneeze, a twitch until I started to speak to you. And I'm laughing like like I am now because I dropped you again. Oh crap. You had just finished saying the last
Yeah.
syllable of that prayer, and all of a sudden it was a bloop. It was like, okay.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
You know what?
So hopefully it should be good now.
Okay. So anyway, here we are. Fast forward. We were talking about this lady, but now you you moved out west. So let me ask you. Up to this point, are you still having these encounters? Have they slowed down, or um, or have you found like now? This is a bad comparison, but have you realized, when I'm engaged in certain activities which are going to be exposing or challenging to these dark forces, that they like start intensifying their visits or their attacks on you or whatever? Have you?
Yeah, I mean, there's levels of things that they do. It's harassment or oppression or depression, or it just makes things very difficult. They operate not only just in the air and the atmosphere around us, but they work through people.
Okay.
And people don't understand that they're actually under the governments of Satan and
Mm-hmm.
Lucifer and demonic powers. If you're not under the governments of God, you're under the governments of Satan. And you operate in his domain, and you could be used by him without even knowing it.
Okay.
So people that, can harass and come through people and,
Sure.
and things of that nature. And, but one of the more recent ones was, before I moved out to where I'm at right now, was at the old house.
Mm-hmm.
And not the one with it was my father's house.
Okay.
And he had recently passed away, and I was in his bedroom. I was cleaning out his closet, and came across like this old. He didn't throw anything out, so it was like this old warm green sweater that was there forever. And then I came across like a Miami Hurricanes T-shirt.
Okay.
And then I was that night I was trying to go to sleep, and I just sensed something kind of like enter my room, and I look up, and it's my father, or something in the appearance of my father. And to give you a visual, my dad looks a lot like Danny DeVito.
Okay.
The short Italian guy, and kind of,
Right.
round Italian guy. And he's wearing the green sweater. And so right off the bat, I know it's demonic, because my dad would never have been wearing that sweater. It was tucked away for like 20 years.
Right. It's like, like we were talking about, something you put away in the closet and forget about.
Yeah. And I'm like looking at this thing, like my father. We'll call him my father. Okay. So I'm looking at my father in the corner of my eye, very, very suspicious. And he's holding the Miami Hurricanes T-shirt. It's folded up. And I don't say anything. I'm just looking at him. And he comes walking toward me. And then he kind of leads in to give me a hug. And I'm laying down. And like, I don't hug back, but he comes in for this hug, this awkward hug. And as he peels away and pulls his head back, his face is before mine, and the edges are melting off like a cigarette paper. Like it's just kind of burning backwards. And there's this skull-like image, and the eyes were like gleaming yellow globes boring into me, trying to create this fear in me. And it would have horrified anybody. And it was terrifying, but I knew from the get-go that it was not my father. So it wasn't as frightening as it tried to make itself out to me.
Oh, I imagine it sounds like, I hate to say it, but it's like your old hat at this. Did you have any siblings who ever had experiences of this type at all?
No, because the devil loves his own, so he doesn't show up like that.
Okay. Now, I was just wondering if, like, let me pick on his family. Let me feel the pressure, and I'm gonna give grief to his family.
Oh,
like your
they will
sibling.
do that from time to time. Yeah, it's kind of like they play very dirty. They tickle you down. They mess with your family. When they have their family, mess with you, harass and instigate you, they don't even understand what they're, the spirit that they're operating under. But it does happen from time to time. But but no, they don't have these experiences because they're not believers.
Let me ask you, have you ever had anybody come to you for help, like somebody that is starting to go what you've already gone through, and they've come to you for help?
Well, I'm on these shows a lot, so if I get call-ins and people, or like I'm being harassed. This thing is pulling my hair out. It's wrecking my home, and things of that nature. And so I get people. The book has done like a very incredible thing where it's, and the reason why people don't talk about this stuff is because, or what's happening to them, because they don't want people to think they're crazy.
Of course not.
So I tell people, like, this stuff has been happening since the dawn of time, and it's, you're not crazy for experiencing these things, and to me, it's more natural than not. And and so so I pray for these people, and and I tell them, what they should do, and then a lot of these times when they're experiencing um, levels of demonic entities or whatever, if they're not a believer in Christ and they're not a follower, then
Mm-hmm.
that my next question is, are you tampering with things of the occult?
Okay.
Meaning, tarot cards, uh, spiritists, necromancy, calling up the dead, witchcraft, or things of that nature. And at first they're reluctant. Well, and then I have to
Right.
ask them again, and then they kind of like, come clean. And a lot of times people are tampering with the occult, which opens up the doorway
Right.
to these demonic harassment, oppression, harassment, and you keep tampering with it long enough, in the most extreme form is possession. So, but yeah, these people, like, uh, they reach out to me because the book has made them comfortable um, to
Right.
reach out to me.
Exactly. Exactly. People sometimes feel like you described very isolated because number one, they don't want the stigma attached to them of either being crazy or that person. And I think it helps
Right.
when you read or hear whatever. Okay, this has happened to other people. There's a way out of this somehow.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly.
because if
Yes.
not, um, I could see where somebody that finds themselves in this scenario, especially if the type of visitations that you're talking about, where they at some point they might even contemplate suicide because I can see where
Yes.
somebody that doesn't see how I don't see an end to this or how am I going to get out of this? Um,
Yes. Well, this is what I talk about in the book. Is the book has a couple of different sections, and one of the sections is it talks about the various spirits, just some of them that operate in the spiritual, in the atmosphere without people knowing it. And fear is a big one. It's and people don't realize that there's spirits of fear,
okay,
spirits of anxiety, and there's spirits of suicide.
sure,
Um, just like there's spirits of greed and spirits of gluttony and spirits of all kinds of things, sexual, lustful spirits, and things, perverse spirits and things of that nature. While there's people suffering with a desire to commit suicide or under the influence of a suicidal spirit.
okay,
And this is what people don't understand, is you don't have to be visited by horned monsters or demonic beings. You might not ever see anything, but the operation in the atmosphere or the spirit realm around you, you may be influenced by it and not even know it.
right,
And so
right.
that's why I wrote the book, was to open the eyes of people to understand that these things are operating and functioning all around us,
Right. This is not
and
like
you may
something,
not be aware.
right. In other words, you might be being manipulated without realizing, you know, w-
Yes,
okay,
yes. You may be also operating under its governance and not even know about it.
okay, right. You're
So,
because and that's one of the things, and I've talked about it on some of my other shows, which is everybody thinks of these types of attacks as like the Hollywood version, The Exorcist, all these movies that
right,
people,
right.
furniture flies across the room, and I think sometimes it's much more subtle and insidious, for lack of a better word, as far as how it
Yes, because
works.
because the reason, yes, and exactly, and that's why I wrote the book, because what you see in Hollywood is extreme forms. It makes for great entertainment,
Sure.
right? But then there's the everyday. How do these demonic spirits operate in the everyday lives of individuals like you and me?
Exactly, exactly. And
And
a
this
lot of
is how
people,
they work. They
right.
work, yes, yes,
And some people, because
and
they're
this is
they're
how they
trained, like you
work.
said, by Hollywood, it's like, yeah, unless
Right,
it's fantastical, extreme, over the top, um, things of
right,
this nature, I've heard of people that it's little by little, isolation. It doesn't like go from
Yes.
0 to
Yes.
60, and
Right.
it starts to unravel somebody's life or mental stability incrementally.
Right. That's right.
And
Exactly. Exactly. And they're patient. They're
oh, I'm
patient. They'll
sure.
wait. They'll wait your lifetime.
Oh, well, yeah, no, that there's nothing. Yeah, right, exactly. Some people, and I've said, some people sometimes, because of what you described, they start engaging in occult stuff, even if it was years ago, like, or like, when people say, "Oh, I did stupid stuff when I was a teenager," or they were not actively, and
Right.
it's seen as an invitation, but that invitation might not be taken up for years. All right,
Yeah.
so
Well, this is what I tell people is like, um, that it opens a doorway. Now, people don't think of it as like an invitation, like, "Hi, demons, come on into me."
sure,
Like, that's not the invitation, but the invitation, it's seen as an invitation not by the person who's dabbling. It's seen as an invitation by these demonic spirits, meaning that if you were to cast the demon out of somebody or to try to expel the demon, it would say something to the effect like, "Well, I belong here. This one's mine. I was invited."
right,
And meaning that their use of a spell or dabbling with the tarot cards or spirit mediums or things of that nature, not knowing that is seen as the invitation. You open the door in the spirit realm for these
right,
things to access your life. And that's why it's seen as an invitation, not by the user, by the demonic powers.
right. In other words, just because you don't see it as an invitation doesn't mean it wasn't taken as one.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you tread a very fine line when it comes to things of this nature. Um, what do you have you ever met? How can I say this? Have you ever met anybody that when you meet them, you go, "This person," I don't want to say possessed because that's a really loaded word, but either somebody that's either I want to, if you want to say oppressed or obsessed,
Yes.
that you could
Yes.
tell when
All
you
the
meet
time.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. All the time. Yeah. Yeah. Because um, it's called like God gives you a spirit of discernment, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you can discern what's going on with somebody or what they're influenced by.
Okay.
And it happens all the time where it's like, I know immediately if somebody's practicing witchcraft,
Okay.
because you'll it can't. Now we're talking about very, very highly spiritual stuff here.
Okay.
So, and how you hear from God and how you receive it from Him in the spirit. Okay, so it's you'll know immediately because it'll hit your spirit like a hammer, like witchcraft. Like, yeah, it's so to the believer or the follower, it's given very, very starkly.
Okay.
Um, at times, what people deal with, and especially witchcraft, like, that's all you'll hear is witchcraft, boom, and you can feel it like a hammer inside of you. I can't explain it any other way,
Okay.
but for those who are followers of Christ and believers who believe God in a very, very deep level will understand what I mean. The message is given very, very sharp and very clear.
Do you think that some people, um, because that let's say you've looked into someone's eyes and you're thinking, boy, this person looks human on the outside, but there's something else
Oh
in
yeah,
the driver's
you
seat.
can see darkness.
Right.
Yeah, you can see darkness in people. Yeah, all the time. hmm Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very apparent. Yeah, like you could see darkness in people, and you could see a lot of things in people. Yeah, but you could sense darkness on people. You can see darkness in people, and it's usually you can look in the eyes, and 9 times out of 10, kind of know that there's something going on there for sure. Yeah.
Have you incorporated any of your experiences into your writing? I mean, like fictional stuff, or do you think it's tinged
Uh,
it
well, with
somehow?
the, well, well, with Demons Among Us, these are my own, my own personal accounts. My own the historical account is
Hmm.
that's in there was the first fully documented eyewitness account of demonic possession in American history, and it
Okay.
happened 20 years before the Salem Witch Trials.
Okay.
And and the reason why it's the first fully documented account was that the story takes place between the town minister, small of a very very small town in Massachusetts, and in 1671. So
Okay.
basically, Massachusetts was freeze. So these
Okay.
people were in the woods, and town minister takes place between the town minister and the 16-year-old maid or maid servant who lived with him
Hmm.
for a couple. Started shortly after she started to live with him, and she
Okay.
started to manifest signs and that he thought were quite strange or curious, and so he found it alarming enough to take to his journal, and he started writing a blow by blow for 90
Okay.
days what was happening to this girl. And you talk about, you know, true horror. This was as horror as it gets. And this girl started exhibiting some very, she was, um, uh, she was inspired and she was under demonic assault. And she was um, going through some very, very, very bizarre experiences. Um, I don't want to give away the book,
Okay. No,
but
no,
she
I
went through
understand, but
some
that's so.
very, very
I'm
horrible.
listening to you with rapt attention. It's like, oh, um,
Yeah, I mean, very, 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 very severely, highly demonic attacks that this young girl was experiencing, and he was writing them down in his journal. And some of the things that would happen, she started exhibiting like she would she would get under attack and she would start screaming and roaring like through the house, and they would try to like pin her down with three or four people, and she had like this superhuman strength. And they talk, this is a 16-year-old girl. This is
okay,
this is not
right,
this is not a monster. This is the reason why um, it was so impressive to them was because this was a young girl. She did not have the capacity, the strength of like 20 men.
right,
So,
right, right.
and and it happened a couple times. A couple times she tried to um, throw herself in the fire. Uh,
Wow.
she she and there's a scene in the book where um, she was told to go kill the minister, and so she takes a blade, and the devil puts a blade in her hand, and he's showing up physically,
Okay.
and he says puts a blade in her hand and commands her to go and kill the minister in his sleep. So she starts walking up the stairs with this blade, and uh, by by a providence, he wakes up and he appears at the top of the stairs, and she hides the blade behind her back, and he's basically like, what are you doing?" And she snaps out of it,
Right.
And so there's some very, very, very sick scenes in there. I want to say very disturbing scenes of what had happened in the story. And then the reason why it's in the book is because it was, you know, um, it was so little known uh, and lost in history that uh,
Yes, I never heard of that.
when I found it and started peeling away the onion
Mm-hmm.
and found all that was there, it needed to be in the book, and it
No,
was a story that I think
that's
was best told.
right. And you're absolutely right. I had never heard of anything that even similar, as of course, everybody's more than familiar with the Salem witch trials and everything that took place.
Right,
And, that's the one that
right,
everybody thinks of as far as the colonial, that
Yeah,
that time period has always
this is
been.
yeah, this is more harrowing to me. In my opinion, it's more harrowing because this was, you know, this girl was under some serious assault. You know.
Right. Well, and I've heard, and this is, I mean, I think I know the general information that most people know, but I've heard from various that as far as the Salem witch trials and why they went as far as they did, that sometimes that there was more adults in there, as far as trying to take property versus, my point being, versus what you're describing, that there was more of a, how can I say, there was something more going on beyond the surface than these young girls claiming that, that they were getting attacked. That,
Yeah, well, it started off in talking about the Salem witch trials. It started off in the ministers on Samuel Parris, I want to say his name, and his kids were experiencing some things like blowing up nails and things of that nature. And I believe that it started out as like a real kind of like a demonic activity.
mhm.
And then I think people kind of just started to seize on the opportunity to kind
Right,
of throw their neighbors under the bus
right.
because they had, their property.
Right, they would
Um,
forfeit. They
was,
would, these people that were accused would
yeah,
forfeit their properties.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And if you ever read the actual transcripts, these court transcripts are heartbreaking because there's people in there, an 80-year-old godly woman
Right.
is accused, and when they come to her house and they tell her that Sarah Good had accused you of being a witch, I mean, literally, she almost fell down, and she would fell down in shock and horror because
Right.
a it, it's not who she was, and b the accusation was so searing that it would
hmm
have been better to be called a murderer
Right. Well, and this is the thing. I think
than
that
a,
when you read, these were not people that you could say, well, maybe they weren't in league with the devil, but they were doing risky. They were involved in risky. All these people were, up to then, upstanding part of their communities. And it seemed like
yes.
all that was necessary was for this young girl to point the finger at them, and whatever type of life they might have led up to then didn't matter because they immediately fell under suspicion. And I hate to say it, that was it. That's all it took, in other words. And I think when
Yeah,
did
it
it?
is all it took, and
Yeah.
it is all it took. And Ann Putnam wrote in her diary that she, she made it up, and that
Yes.
Mercy, I want to say like Mercy Lewis, um, she wrote stuff like you should have sworn Mercy today, in court, and she really kind of put it on, and she was in shock that the court actually believed their performances,
Right. Right.
and so there was a measure of that. But again, I think that it started off as a real thing,
hmm
and then you had these, for some reason or another, these kids or these young girls just started accusing upstanding citizens
Oh,
of their village.
you would think at some point that the elders, if you want to call them that, they would have told these girls, "You need to go home, and you got a problem," and they just let them run the show, and makes you think that they were being utilized. It was like, wow, okay, we could do something with this. And what was it? I think it
Well,
stopped. What was it after they accused the governor's wife or something like that? Somebody of importance.
yeah, so that it was how it always happens. But okay, so the minister that I talk about in the book, his name is Samuel Willard. It was because of his experience with the girl I write about
Uh
in the
huh.
story. It was this experience that he had which qualified him to be part of the Salem witch trials. Now,
Okay.
he was um, it was his mentality was very, very moderate for the time because he was arguing against the trials. He was trying to stop them,
Okay.
and he was revolutionary for his time because they wanted to, you know she's a witch, we're going to have to kill these people, and so but his thinking was, and he argued this in court,
Okay.
that they wanted to admit spectral evidence,
What?
meaning that the astral projection or the spirit of so and so was attacking, let's just say, nurse, goody nurse, or whatever, whatever. And so they were saying that it wasn't them attacking them in physical form, but they were appearing in a spectral form. Now they wanted to allow this spectral evidence. And so Minister Samuel Willard stands up and says, listen, you can't allow, this is not sufficient enough evidence to convict on a witchcraft crime, a capital crime worthy of execution, because this does not stand up as proof. Because if you admit this, they're going to see witches under every ox cart and corn row in the colony.
Of course,
right? And so this was his thinking that actually he tried to stop the trials.
Well, obviously it didn't work, but you think back to those times. And those were the times where children were like, it was like that, what was that saying? Seen and not heard and things. That's why it makes it so incredible that so much power was turned over to these girls, where it was like, you didn't have to be that intelligent to realize there's more going on here than, why are these girls accusing? And it just got so out of hand that I imagine people must have thought, I think I'm going to leave town until these girls calm down. Because anybody, they could point the finger at anybody.
We can't get swept up.
Oh, sure.
Well, it's funny because, you got to understand, like, when there's something of this nature going on, there was a hysteria, a wave of hysteria. Now, we all like to think that we like to think that we're so smart that we would never get washed up in some hysteria. Well, 99% of the nation just did.
Oh yeah,
by putting their masks on.
Yeah, no, a lot of people don't realize. I know that when people look at that, like you said, through the lenses of present day, you go, God, that would never happen now. I want to bet, and maybe not exactly that same exact scenario, but where either through fear or stupidity, what else could there be, or
it's hysteria,
or hysteria, or fear of. Because I'm thinking, okay, and which is, I think, what happened also, where if you dissent, you could be the next one on the chopping block. So it's like, okay, I'll just, I'll pretend I'm scared just so that I don't get the finger pointed at me, that kind of deal. And not because you're really, really scared. How's that? Not because you're like, oh my God. It's like, you know what? Let me just go with the flow, because the last thing I need is, to be, pointed out as you're not going with the program here. And yes, of course, absolutely, absolutely. And I tell, as a matter of fact, that my shows, I say, here we are in 2023, and I tell everybody, I remember back in the December of 2019, I remember it so clearly because my mom, who was 93, passed away December 28th. So when you have certain events in your life that you remember distinctly what was going on at that time period. And I said that back then, right there at that cusp between 2019 and 2020, there was just no way I think anybody could have imagined what was rolling in towards everybody. No. And I think that if somebody would have said this was going to happen the next 2 years, I would have said, no, that's not possible. No way. Nobody's going to go for that. And I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah. It was, I think a lot of people had a big waking up as far as what human nature is all about. Yeah. I think everybody got a good lesson on that. And there's still
are. You could see what fear, how controllable people are through fear.
Yes.
And this is exactly this is a design, but you could see exactly like how controllable people can be through fear. And I've always wondered, how the heck did these Nazis get all of these people to do these things.
Well, I want to say,
And now I know.
well, no, you know what? It was a big. How can I say? It was more a psyop, I think, than anything else to get people to be so. I don't want to say, like you said, manipulated or fearful. Like, when you let some
Hmm.
people, a person's imagination run wild, sometimes they do more damage than if you actually showed them consequences. And
Yeah, yeah,
it was like a big psyop where people were. I can understand at the beginning where everybody was unsure, and then when it just grew, it was like people. It was like, man, what happened to everybody's backbone? Hello, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So,
It was, I fought with people everywhere. Everywhere. I never wore a mask, by the way. So it was like,
uh,
I knew it was. I won't tell you how I knew it
mhm,
was bullshit from the beginning, but I knew it was bullshit. And not that there wasn't a virus,
sure,
but
I
that the
understand.
fear being, but that the fear that was being promulgated was BS. And so I never wore a mask. And you want to talk about people freaking out? You
Oh,
know,
I know.
I mean, it's crazy. I fought with doctors. I
No, well, you
I
know
fought
what?
with I fought everywhere.
I personally now, even now, I've gone to concerts and places with a lot of people, and you see people wearing masks, and I'm like, what are you doing? If you
What
are
are you
really,
doing? Yeah,
if you really believe that you need to, what are you doing here in this place full of people? I'd be sitting at home listening to the music. If this really concerned you so much that you think I need to wear a mask, you would, if that was what my concern was, you wouldn't get me like nowhere near an event full of thousands of people. So it's
right.
almost like oxymoronic, what they do versus like, okay, you're scared, but you're not scared enough not to not come to an event. If that's, I don't know, I don't get it. I see that, and I'm sure everybody's seen people sitting in their car by themselves with a mask on.
Oh my God,
It's like,
that drives me crazy.
what do you think's gonna
That
happen to
drives me
you?
absolutely crazy. First of all you need to do is read the box, and the box
Yes, I
says
know.
that the mask does not
It doesn't do
work.
anything for you. It doesn't. It was
And I was like,
what's
and I was
the
like, why is it like? Why don't they just read the box?
because
What's wrong with
everybody,
people?
I want to say that in some cases that became like a talisman, that has powers
It became a
beyond
religion.
beyond like, okay, whatever everybody thought. It's like if I wear the mask, it's like, okay, that doesn't work that way. This is not, the mask is not a magical item. It's not going to.
Yeah,
And you know what? I'm
yeah.
going to tell you, the only persons that I really, really give a pass to is I've seen some very elderly people nowadays still wear it, and I'm like,
Hmm.
you know what? I give them a pass, even though it doesn't. But I can understand where they've in their mind they need to do this, and that's the only people that's like, whatever,
Yeah,
it's okay, whatever.
yeah,
But yes,
yeah.
I've
We're thinking
seen
we need to
that.
mask up our toddlers of 3 or 4 years old,
Yes,
and you got your kid masked up like a,
yes,
you know, it's
yes,
just it was what we lived through was absolutely astounding.
yes. It was, and luckily for us, we were in Florida, where it was.
Thank God,
Yes,
thank
but
God, the land of freedom.
yes, and I have friends, in different parts of the United States and things like that. Plus, just watch the news, and it's like, what in the world is going on? And um, I'm thinking it's something like what you said, and I'm gonna go into what the medical field. At one point I was like, how did all these psychopaths get to be doctors and nurses? I don't get this. How did this happen?
I know.
Um,
It was so like so many levels and so many things of like just people trying to keep their jobs,
yeah.
and then well, and I thought the same thing too. So I did some research on like the Holocaust,
Mm-hmm.
and this was very very akin to Nazism,
Right.
and so I was like, well, how do you get these doctors to do this? Well, in the Nazis, and that's that time, they had doctors who were willing to put people to death, euthanize, uh, 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 handicapped people,
Right, right, right. They were
mentally
like
disabled.
euthanizing people that
Yeah,
were, yeah, with some type of handicap or impairment and things of this nature.
yeah.
But you know what?
And so they they got him to do it. And it was the same exact thing. There will be people willing enough to comply, whether you're a doctor or what
No,
have
but
you.
I could understand where you get
Yeah,
some that it's like, okay, they snuck in and whatever. But I was surprised at how many number of nurses and doctors working in the hospitals and everything were not treating people, for with their vaccination status. And I was like, what happened to your Hippocratic oath? Hello? Where did that go? And it
right,
was like, wait a minute.
right.
There's
Out the window.
something wrong.
Out
There's
the
like,
window.
you're like a dyed in the wool psychopath. You might be supposedly in the medical field. I don't care what you call it. But, and
Yeah,
I totally understand about people wanting to keep their jobs, but I heard many, many stories of medical staff going that extra mile just to be like in other words, I had even heard stories of uh, local hospitals like, hey, if you're not if you can't show proof you're vaccinated, you might not get treated, or they might treat you rough at that if you
right.
need to go into the emergency room. And I think a lot of people did that should have gone in to get medical attention, emergency or otherwise, just didn't because they were scared. They were scared of how they were going to get
No,
treated.
absolutely not. I mean, it really created this distrust of the
Yes.
whole medical community,
Oh
because
yeah.
it was like, oh, you're going in for a motorcycle accident and you're tagging me with COVID?
Yeah,
What?
everybody that, and I think that, and that's the part I don't understand, which is like most average people, even prior to this, you know how they would always give out these yearly numbers of people that had died of the flu, all right?
Right.
Whether they were comorbid, the flu was, and I remember that, they would have these, get your flu shot and all that stuff because so many people did die of the flu. And sometimes they had other things going on, but whatever. All of a sudden, nobody was dying of the flu anymore. It was like, okay, so what
Yeah.
happened to the flu? Nobody dies of that anymore?
Because they were calling it COVID.
Right. I couldn't understand that. It was like, wait, okay, so every death that has these symptoms, no longer the flu just evaporated? And that's the part I couldn't
Yeah.
understand, like where people were in question, or some people questioned it, and they were like, "Okay, what do we do?" I think it was just new territory for so many people, and they
Yeah.
were unprepared that they were going to get it from all sides. I think that's what happened to a
Yeah.
lot. And
Yeah. It was not good.
well, I don't know if you've heard that now they are looking at, and I've seen that. I've seen it for a while, where they've pushed. First they started with the teledoc medical, where you could basically do like a doctor's visit via video, all right?
Yeah,
But
like a Zoom thing. Yeah.
like a Zoom thing, and so I can see where there's moments where it's something minor where you could say, okay,
Hmm.
but that the push that it's going through is for the visit not to be with your doctor or your PA or whatever, but with AI. AI will be the one that will be doing that you'll be talking to and describing your symptoms for the
Wow.
that's the push eventually. Like, in other words, that's the ultimate aim of this, but they can't go there right away. So it's more like, well, let's push the teledoc, which I've seen that very much so. The
Huh. Wow.
teledoc, and then pretty soon the person, well, not the person, whatever, at the other end of the visit is not the doctor or nurse or somebody. It'll just be,
Wow. So basically, like they're grooming people
yes,
to kind of
yes,
form them into the idea of the AI
yes.
diagnosis.
And by the way, they're doing that
I
also
think so.
with a lot of the mental health services. There's a
Oh
lot
wow.
of mental health services now where instead of, let's say, you going to see a therapist or a counselor, in person, basically it's the same idea. We're going to do it via video or on the phone, and then eventually, the person you're going to be talking to, or the entity or whatever, I don't want to call it because it's not a person, is AI. And of course, they try very hard, and I'm sure they're working feverishly in some laboratory somewhere to make the voice and even the appearance very human-like, that kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah.
So that
Oh
people,
yeah.
because we as humans, we kind of we kind of fall for it, kind of thing. So,
We do. I just watched this whole video on someone sent me about clones. I don't know. I don't want to get too far into this, but like, there's people out there with clones. There's a cloning company,
Mm-hmm.
and there's people out there who are clones, and they're saying that uh, George W. has like 10 clones, and
I've heard of that. But you know what I
and
was surprised at, and
yeah,
I didn't know this? That this, by the way, was like, okay, that now it's very commonplace, and of course, if you have the money to clone a pet, there was that movie, that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, the
mm,
God, I can't remember. It was a clone theme, but this was like 25 years ago, and the whole
yeah,
this starts out where they're squabbling about whether to clone the pet, the family pet, because then I
right,
was like, and I want to say about a year ago, I started reading up on it. It was like, okay, no, you can do that. Bunch of stars and celebrities and people, obviously with the money, have had their
yeah.
pets cloned. Like this is very, and I was like, okay, well, boy, and I was like, okay, well, that's how it all starts, and of course,
I think we're so far advanced that we don't even know,
oh
because
yeah,
if you're cloning pets, we're way
sure,
beyond that, behind the scenes.
right, and I have heard that with that the CRISPR, that genome editing, uh,
Mm,
that there are some people in the field that are saying, hey, we there's got to be a limit, there's got to be a stopping point on what, in other words, just because we can do it doesn't mean we should.
well, there won't be.
But,
There won't be a stop, because um, there's no because man doesn't know any limits.
well, the thing, how can I say it? Unfortunately, a lot of this is always couched at the beginning as we want to try to help some disadvantaged person, animal, plant,
Yeah,
world,
just the kid.
landscape. That's how it's
Yeah,
introduced. And of course, all most human beings, which are not psychopaths, which most of us are not, are like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds great. Of course,
yeah.
we fall for it all the time. And next
Well,
thing
it's
you
what I call
know,
yeah, what I call the creaking door syndrome. You have to know that that's how they're trying to get their foot in the door.
oh, the foot's in.
Yeah,
The foot's been in for a while. Yeah.
right, exactly. So it's like that's why they always introduce, like, oh, we're trying to help your children. Well,
Yes.
who doesn't want to
Yes.
help them? But
Of
then
course.
but then there's a whole other agenda behind it. But then
Of course.
but that's the creaking door. That's how they get that door open. And you have to know that that's the nature of man. That it's not going to stop right there. It's just not, and it never
Unfortunately,
has, and it never will.
unfortunately not. And the thing is that, nowadays, whether it's a government, a university, or a private corporation that can run a laboratory in any place of the world where there's any type of oversight, they can basically do or develop things in their lab as far as, let's say, what we were talking about, the cloning or gene editing
Hmm.
or whatever, that kind of deal. And of course, a lot of this, and I'm sure you've heard, oh, well, you know what? We could do gene editing where we can get rid of all these genetic type of diseases so that a child will be
Mm,
born. Because that's how it's introduced. But it's like, okay, what
right.
basically you're trying to manufacture is this perfect type of human, which of course only somebody that has a lot of money or status will be able to produce this perfect child, and then us normal people with all the good and the bad,
Right.
we're
Right.
gonna be obsolete. And
Yeah. Well, that's how it always is.
well, and now that we've gone down the
But yeah,
sci-fi rabbit hole, and it's funny.
we absolutely went down the rabbit hole, but it's, the stuff is out there.
Yes, it is. It is. And you know what? Once upon a time, I hate to say this, that would have been like sci-fi, like wow, that dystopian kind of future. That's like wow, Blade Runner, or one of those deals.
Yeah.
And it's like no, it's not as sci-fi-ish as we would want to think.
Yeah. I mean, well, once now that life had become, you know, sci-fi is actually here.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
It's not,
It's
it's not
one of
sci-fi like
those
the most of the time.
things. Sometimes we had the movies like Back to the Future where it was the future and it was like that never happened. Like
Yeah.
and then there's others where
The
man they were
Jetsons.
pretty close on the money with
Well, look how close the Jetsons were.
well the yeah, I hate to say it, the Jetsons, it was great. I would love to have a maid that ran around. But it was again the even then. How's this? in the Jetsons, the robot was never made to look human. How's that?
Well, okay, so yeah, the robot never looked human, but they had Zoom meetings. They had
Yeah,
uh, TVs where he was talking to his boss
yeah, yeah. The
via
video.
TV. Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
really kind of had some stuff that was very very
I
where we're
remember.
at now,
Yeah,
which means maybe there was somebody who knew where the
what was
technology was
coming down the
going. I
pike?
don't know.
Yeah, of course, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, you know.
Mr. It has
But
been
yeah,
absolutely wonderful to talk to you. It is so interesting. Are you working on any projects right now? Any new books? Anything?
yeah, I am. I wrote a screenplay that I'm looking to to looking to for producers and agents to get behind right
Okay.
now, and that's in the works. I'm looking for studios to get with on that. So if anybody wants to
Is
team
it?
up with a number one best-selling author on a really scary movie,
I was gonna say,
I
is
don't
it
want to
that
give everything
genre?
away.
Is it that the horror genre?
It is,
Okay.
and it's it's a story of a witch trial that goes horribly wrong, and I don't want to give away all
Okay.
of the. I can't give away the
Sure, sure. I
details
understand.
because people are
I know.
they
I
need
understand.
people like me to steal from.
I get it.
so
Believe me, I get it. I get it. Let me, for my podcast listeners, what is your website?
well, you can reach out to me on social. At
Okay.
Instagram at m.bar.gorga,
Okay.
and on Facebook at mrgorga.
Okay.
Um, yeah, currently not on a website.
Okay.
I know that's not
Well, you know what?
that's probably
Sometimes,
not the best thing.
no, don't worry. I'm gonna put a link in the credits of the show anyway. Probably to Facebook for you. So
Yeah,
from there they could you know send you a message or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. People reach out to me all the time. And what else? And I was working on right now. I'm working on a fiction novel, and that's pretty much I kind of write in that same vein where it's you know old 16, 1700s
okay,
kind of creepy witchcrafty kind of stuff. So
okay,
that's where I'm going with that one as well. So
fascinating. Again, thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful to speak to you.
it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Likewise, take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.
Okay, here we go. Hmm. I apologize. I apologize. When you hear, I still have to edit. That's what this, one of the advantages of having a pre-recorded show. I kid you not. I've been working on my computer. It's just been one of those days. There's other days that but I was, I have not had a blip on the radar when it comes to um, my internet connection. Nothing. No slowdowns, no hiccups, no nothing. Right? And as soon as I connected with him, everything, all my connections, it started doing that warbly stuff, which is usually when your bandwidth, and it's like, okay, by the way, I don't have a million things going on that you're saying, okay, it's eating my bandwidth or whatever. There it wasn't. I mean, as a matter of fact, in the middle of the day, I've got more stuff going on that's connected to that internet than even now. So, for lack of a better word, as far as how can I explain that, I can't explain it. I can't. Because it's, boy, it's one of those deals where, you I don't know. And sometimes, no, not sometimes. I have called it, what they call, paranormal sabotage, because it's like this is so unusual and the timing is like impeccable that it leaves nothing else um, as to why. And one of the times I he basically told me, this happens a lot. This happens a lot. And I said, really? Yeah, this happens quite a lot of times where I start going and talking about certain things, and things go sideways when it comes to the recording. And I was like, okay, because I told him um, if I would have seen that my internet for some reason was acting weird, I would have called you on the phone and we would have done it what we ended up doing versus doing the streaming. And uh, so there you go. What can I say? Now, what he talks about, okay, I don't know how he's still sane, all right? No kidding. Because for me personally, I think about what he described, and that can put a big strain on a person's, how can I say it, mental, spiritual well-being. Because when you just don't know when something like this is going to make an appearance, I don't know, that almost makes you feel like, man, when's the other shoe gonna drop? And but at the same time, I like that he pointed out exactly what he said, that sometimes there's people going out there with going having similar experiences, and they don't talk about it. Contrary to what everybody thinks, that, oh, I'm going to call a paranormal group, or I'm even going to go to my clergy, if you have a clergy to go to, or whatever. There's a lot of people that don't. I think they go through stages of either denial, um, then, but when they can't do the denying anymore, they, they want to outlast it and wait and see, okay, maybe it'll just stop. And then it doesn't. And then little by little, and I've noticed this in some of the cases I ever handled, where it's something like this, where there was a malevolent slant to the experiences the person or the family was having, they start retreating into some type of isolation, and they, like he said, the stigma. You see, they're going to think I'm crazy, or I'm hallucinating, I'm doing drugs, you name it. Believe it or not, sometimes, and when we look at these paranormal shows, that people seem almost excited that they're having this paranormal investigation, and the group shows up and this and this and that. That's not accurate all the time. And the reason why I'm saying this is there's times that people realize that when they start going out and maybe asking for help, whether maybe family, I'm not saying everybody, family, the clergy, even maybe if you belong to a certain group or a church, and you start describing, or even people come to your house and they get that feeling of some darkness or something like really intimidating. You know how that thing, like, you're afraid that you're going to catch what that person has, that people back away from you, including family, by the way. Don't always think family, that people like do it. Clergy does it, all right? I've heard of clergy say that the ones that kind of a little bit dismissive, whatever. People, when they realize this is not like, oh, like the stuff you see on the shows, that there's something really um, dark and sinister going on, they back away because they're afraid that whatever you're experiencing, they're going to catch it, almost like a disease or an illness, and people back away. So sometimes people, either they have a little taste of it and they shut down, or they anticipate, you know what, if this gets out, people are not going to want to, they're not going to come want to visit with me. They're not going to want to be my friends or my family, or what, and they kind of shut down. So what he was saying about that, when people have read his book, they can say, okay, you know what, there's other people out there that have had this type of experience, which is like really dark. All right. Uh, and this is how they found the solution, or this is what happened afterwards. Again, is almost like the group therapy thing, the benefits of which is you don't feel isolated. You realize other people have gone through this, and the solution is, or there's hope at the end of the tunnel, whatever, one of those deals. But yeah, sometimes it does take something like that for people to, sometimes people read those books not for the scare or the scare factor. They read them because they're looking for I need to find somebody who's had something similar to what I'm experiencing, and they can tell me before I go blundering around going to all the wrong sources for help. Maybe I can read this story about what this person experienced and how they got help. That kind of deal. Yeah. And you know what? I've heard of sometimes people have dabbled in the occult. By this, I'm not talking about the Ouija board. I'm talking about that you were either in a group or a coven or you hung out with people that you shouldn't have, even if you were a hanger on. And maybe that was sometime in the past, and then this biting them in the butt, and they're almost afraid or embarrassed to maybe they're in a relationship with somebody that they never told this person about what they were involved in. And they're like, I can't talk, I can't say to this person, you know what? I was doing this, I was dabbling in this, I was hanging out with these people. So they're like kind of like painted themselves into a corner as to what the source is for what they're experiencing or seeing or hearing or whatever the case might be. And then how do you explain yourself out of that one? So sometimes, it's always it's always good to have a DIY because basically at the end of the day, that's really among other things, and then I've said this before, and again, this is based on, unfortunately, what you see in a lot of these paranormal reality shows, where the cavalry is either the paranormal groups coming over, and in truth, where people find themselves in these type of situations, you could ask for help, this and that, but really the one that has to take care of this and handle this is the people, the person, the couple, the family that have they're the ones they're this thing of like that you're going to have somebody come in and clean up the mess, and they're going to go away, and this horrible thing that happened or whatever was going on, it just, that's it, it's over. Nah. Mm-mm. No, doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way at all. And a lot of people after the fact find out the hard way that you're going to have to get your hands dirty in the case of, if you want to, whether you want to call it banish, pray away, bind, I don't know, whatever. You have got to be the one to confront whatever it is. How's that? You know, you're the one that has got to confront and defend, whether it's your home, your property, your life, your children's life, your sanity. Uh, you cannot, um, you can't cower it away. Because what happens is, and you'll hear of this, of people that have had groups, even blessings from clergy, different denominations come in, and everything is fine for a bit, and then it comes back. And the reason is that the authority of the person being affected, the target, in other words, that authority, it was missing. Nobody, and I know people can say, well, somebody acting on your behalf up to a certain point, but really, you've got to care enough about your well-being or your life or your safety or your mental health, whatever, to defend it, against whatever it is, to tell them you got to go away, and I'll not have you here. If you want to say the name of Jesus, if you what whatever works for you, as far as that is opposite to whatever it is that usually is evil or dark, evil and dark. Sorry, not or. All right, but not everybody's up to it, and it's a scary thing. It really is, especially when you hear stories like his. That's the kind of stuff that some people, and you know what, for some people out there, they're like, oh, that must be so exciting to be able to see that, and I'd be like, you don't know what you're talking about. All right, having experiences like what he described, this is not like when you go see a horror movie and at the end of the movie the credits roll and that's it, it's over, and you get up and you go home, and that was a real scary movie. I had made me jump a couple of times in my chair, and what about when the credits don't roll and there is no end in sight? Yeah, then everything changes. Then time slows down. And that's when a lot of things happen, like we were talking about, where, hey, this is not that the furniture flying across the room, or, Somebody, no, this is like stuff is happening and weird things are happening in my house. And maybe it's that psyop thing, that psychological warfare where, I have this horrible nightmares and then 2 or 3 days go by and then it comes back and I live constantly wondering when's the next thing going to happen. Sometimes that is the way that kind of evil works its way into your everyday. That's how. All right, guys, please come back every week. I have a lot of great guests, new ones like MR Gorga, returning guests. And again, go to miamighostchronicles.com or mpellicer.com. I have links to my Substack. I have links to all the video and podcast versions of all the shows. And of course, you can find the podcast and the videos. I have videos besides YouTube. I am on Rumble, on Roku, on Cloud Hub, on BitChute, on Steemit, and of course podcasts. I'm the podcast. All the different podcasts are on all the major podcast platforms. You will find me there. Stories of the Supernatural, Nightshade Diary, Supernatural Storytime, or you can look for MP Pellicer. Don't forget also we have eerie news. So until next week, thank you for stopping by. Take care.